Hello everybody, and welcome to this tutorial in which we're going to explore how architectural spaces and sunlight can interact. As you can see, we have 8 different architectural sizes: smaller, bigger, wider, and the openings are also at different positions. And this is a really great exercise to study how, based on where openings are and the size of rooms and where the sun is, we can fill the interior space with natural sunlight. The raw file for this exercise is in the download description. Please download it. And with all that said, let's get going. So here we are. This is our starting file. Let me quickly explain what we have. We have a collection space with the camera, a reference cube, reference humans, and our sunlight. The sunlight has its rotation for X and Z disabled. So wherever we are, we can just press R and rotate it. All the render settings are also all set up. And with all that set, let's make the first room. So we're going to add a plane. This plane should be 15 inches, sorry, 15 feet, and enter. Pretty small. Then we can go into edit mode, press E, drag this up, and type in 10. The unit system is imperial and feet. So since we primarily work here with feet. Very good. Then we can actually select the front face, press X, and delete it. Beautiful. If we now go ahead and start the rendering, you will see it's pretty black inside. Well, there's no ability for the sun to reach this interior space. So what we can do is we turn rendering off, select this top face, and then I can press I for inset, create an offset, press X to delete this face. And then if we render, there we can see how actually sunlight can get into that space. I go to a front view, also turn on perspective. I can turn the cube off, leave edit mode, and take a look at it. So the sunlight goes straight down, touches the ground, and you can see how actually all the walls and the ceiling is also illuminated. For the study, we're always cutting open the space, which means one bounce wall is gone. So that's the reason why, for example, there's a little bit less of light here. For those who like to be more precise, let's press Z and solid. Then I go into edit mode. I select these faces, press F, then that's filled. Very good. The problem is now we can't look into that space. So we're going to look through our camera. To do this, first, I go to the vertical view. Here I switch into my camera. This camera I will position. So I zoom in a little bit there. And then for the camera, I can now go ahead and display the limits. And this start clipping, that I need to put into behind that wall. And now I can actually look through that wall into that space. But this only works actually when we are really looking through the camera. Since we're going to move around in 3D view a lot, that's the reason why I'm using this process of removing actually the front face. This is also borrowed from physical paper modeling, adding lights, and then studying how a light can interact with a construction architectural space. So we're kind of like digitally prototyping it. And in real life, I also cut this front area away. Good. Now, I will right click and join this area. The camera for the moment I won't use. And I go back into my 3D view. There we are. And edit mode. and just remove this face again. Beautiful. Cool. So that's kind of like room number 1. This will I rename room 1 and then put this into this room. Let's make a copy. Shift T and escape. Hide actually this room. Also turn off render ability. So later when we do final renderings, they don't show up. Call this room 2. I would like to make this room now as double as white. We have here a scale factor. Let's apply that scale factor. This room is 15 inches, so 7.5 inches left and right. Let's go into edit mode. I can select actually this face and then move this along the x-axis by 7.5 feet. And then I do the same here. And this is negative 7.5 feet. Very good. If we zoom out now and look at this, we can already see how there's not so much light actually hitting the walls compared to room number 1. See, it's a much brighter room. And it's actually really important to understand. We now select the sunlight and rotate it so it shines into one corner. You can see that that corner really gets nice and bright. And while it's getting brighter, the opposite gets darker. Same in this case. Bring this over. Perfect. That's room number 2. Let's turn off rendering. Now, let's go ahead. We make another room. Shift A. There's a plane. This will be 25 feet. There we are. We're going to apply the scale, going to edit mode, E, and 10 feet up. And then this front face we delete. We press Ctrl R, click, and then right mouse button click. Ctrl B to bevel. Let's say like this. Very good. One Ctrl R on the center, click and right mouse button and Ctrl B, and we bevel this. There. On the left side, we select this face and delete it. On the right side, I first select these edges and then I move this up, make a really tiny opening and remove that face. Now we have 2 little openings. Sorry, one small and one big. Turn on rendering. So in object mode, if I now rotate the sunlight so it looks from the right, kind of like coming from the east, you can see the flatter the sun, the more sunlight we can get in. It's also how it bounces off, but we don't really get a lot of sunlight in. If we go from the right side, well, because this is a huge opening, we give the ability of lots of sunlight to come into the space. This is also a very important tip to understand for digital rendering. Big openings, render engines like small openings are a little bit tricky. As a little side note, and sometimes here we put an extra light in to artificially help the engine to understand that I want light to come in there. But still, you can see we can quite nicely explore how actually such an architectural configuration allows us to get the sunlight or natural light from the outside into the space. I also said natural light. Now we have would have a sky, etc. Or environment would work the same way. Here I would like to only work with the sunlight and keep the environment light out for purpose of just being nice and clean, being able to study how the sun rotation interacts with the architecture. Beautiful. So This was room number 3. Okay, select this down, in there, and out. Actually, this room we can recycle. So Shift D and escape. Then double click and rename this into 4. This we hide. Then we go into edit mode and edge select. These 2 edges we selected fill. And then we can select these edges. Press E and X to move this out. F to fill. And then here, this top face, I delete. And then actually Z and render. So this is kind of like an, how could I say that, an idea of when you have an basement and how do you get light into that basement through openings. I do not see this area to be illuminated correctly. So I have a suspicion some geometry faces are flipped. Let's go to face orientation. And now it's actually is good. Ah, I realized it. I goofed myself. This sunlight is at an angle. All good. Okay, back to rendering. I do have to go into the object mode so I can select the sun. Now, so we can see how the sun, here I can position it to here, shines actually through this opening inside that space. So now this, the more horizontal the sun, the more light we can guide in there. If we make the sun now 90 degrees down, so this means y is 0. Put the sun back to x and y 0. We see this surface is being illuminated. And look at there, how the sunlight bounces up and illuminates it. If I go to here, then also this vertical wall is being hit and the light bounces in. Now it's actually quite interesting to see how you can visualize actually how the sun works. What's going to be interesting in this case also is what happens when we select this face and then we shorten that distance. See, we're making everything darker. Well, it makes sense because we're giving the sun less ability to reach into that space. Here, even though smaller we make it, now this gets a really bright area. Knowing how surfaces bounce off and guide light, and the more illuminated surface I have, the more light can bounce, I can actually go ahead into edit mode and then select this edge, move this up, and you notice how the interior room is getting brighter. And that's simply because this is a bigger surface that's illuminated and is shooting the sunlight into that space. Let's go the opposite. Now we're bringing this actually really down, and it's more complicated. This basically here that sunlight comes down, touches it, and bounces into that room. So maybe a nice front view and perspective. There we are. Pretty cool, no? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Let's go to the next room. Turn this one off. Shift D and escape. And then this will be room 5. Here we will go into edit mode. I will select these edges, delete the vertices, then select these 2 and F. Then Option or Alt click on this edge, Shift Option Alt click on that edge, X and dissolve edge. Control R on top, click, right mouse button, click, Control B, drag this out, and then we select this and E, move this up, maybe by 5 feet, and enter. Then we can select this face and delete that face. Okay. Now, if we start rendering, and there we can see a little bit of light is coming in. It's because the sun goes down, hits the surface, bounces off, bounces onto the ceiling, the wall, and gets down. Now, this basically is nearly the same effect as I showed you in the previous example. Here we have a tunnel and the sunlight shines directly through. But here now when we go ahead and with edge select this edge and move this one down, we can help actually more sunlight to come into that space. So now I'm rotating this, say like this. I still get the sunlight hitting the wall, so let's go minus 90 degrees. So really horizontal. There you can see this, no? A nice big surface, and then the light bounces down, very diffused. It's actually pretty nice and soft. When we go ahead and go into edit mode and explore the same, this wall really gets hit with a lot of sunlight, but you see the light then goes more to the left side. And when I bring this down this way, see that's a little bit, because it's an angle, how it all bounces off. Think about it goes to here and goes down. From here it touches it, maybe goes to there. See, this area is a little bit darker. This way it's a tick brighter. If you look at architectures and factory buildings, and this is, for example, also one construction where you have how light through a flat or curved surface can be guided into an interior space. Awesome. Cool. That was room 5. Room number 6, we can also build from this object. Shift D and escape. Hide this. There, oops. There, and edit mode. These two edges I select and delete, and UU, X and delete vertices. Alt click on this F, and then here we select this face. E, let's go with 6 feet. And then there we bring this up by along the Z axis to 10 feet, and E another 6 feet. And then this face we open. Very good. Okay. Let's go into object mode, rotate the light down, Z and render, and it's pretty pitch black inside. There. Now we can't really see anything. Because we can't really look into that space, let's go into edit mode, and then I select here these faces and press X and delete faces. Very good. Now you can see even here now this area is actually illuminated because the sun hits the ground and bounces all up. Gets a little bit into that tunnel, but it is just too weak. So this is actually a really nice study from the side. Now we start rotating the sun. There you can see what we can do. See how it goes in, zig, zig, zig. It zigzags into that space literally. Then if we can get the sunlight really deep into that space, then we can bring more light into there. It's actually a really nice study when you look at it from just the side in orthographic. because I can see where like these really nice sharp edges of the other architecture. What you can see here, now this is like a dark hole. The light comes to there, but it doesn't really reach it as good. Beautiful. Okay. No, so what might be interesting to try out here. So if we select these edges, drag them down or drag them up. Now the longer the tunnel, the less light gets in there. The shorter the tunnel, we might have to rotate the sunlight, the more light we actually can get in there. Woof. There you see like that got really nice and bright. But the idea here was to do this with a taller tower on top, like this. Beautiful. Okay. Let's go to the next room. Shift A and plane. This one we make 20 by 20. And then apply the scale, going to edit mode, E, and the Z is actually 22. There we are. Then the front face we delete. And then we can select one plane here, Shift D and escape. We move this up by 10 and enter, Control R, left click, right click, Control B, stretch this out, X, delete the faces. And then with edge select here, E and Z, I add kind of like a small side handrail. Yeah, but that looks pretty close. Okay. Then we can select the top here. I press I for an insert, kind of like an offset. Then S and X, we scale this. We can maybe make this, I have point select. I move this, hold Control and snap to this edge and do the same here. Good. And then I select this X and delete this face. Cool. Okay, let's go into render mode. Go to side view and then we can rotate it and then see. So we send the light down really straight. It's a really interesting study. How some areas get light, others are dark, and then also the shadows which are being created. If you go straight down, the light goes down, bounces off, and look how it then coming back up creates that shadow. Pretty cool, no? Okay. Now this is a study, let's say when you have multiple layers, floors. You can also very quickly put in a construction here on top. So E, Z, let's say 6, and enter, S and X, scale this down, F to close this. Then we can select these two faces with face select, I, okay. Then I press P, no, actually, I just press Y to separate it, escape, and Shift H. I hide everything else. What I'm going to do is Control R. These are 5 cuts. Click and right click. Then the same on the opposite. Click and right click. And then with Shift mouse button, I select all those. Control B, make a small frame. And then I can go say select invert, X and edges, Alt H to show everything. Now you see what we created. And going to object mode in render. Now we have, for example, the frame of the windows being projected into that space. Now here currently we only deal also with solid materials. If we have transparent materials, reflective materials, it would change too. Okay, very nice. Let's do actually the last room. So this is room number 7. There we are. Hide this, Shift A, plane, and then this will be, we'll go with a 25. Let's apply the scale, edit mode, E, and 10 feet up. I'm in render mode, turn this off. Then we select the front face, delete it, select this one. There we are. Yeah, that's kind of okay. And then here in this case, I press P to separate it. It's a new object. So this is, for example, room 8. And this is window panel. Well, actually, it's blind. We'll see in a moment when we turn this into a blind. First thing, right click, set origin to geometry. You see it snap to there, and Z and render it. Now it's black. Well, that thing closes it. And this is the y-axis. Let's rotate it. Look how by how we are rotating this, we are letting light in or light not come in. Let's go actually 90 degrees. Okay, move this backwards. No, less is blocked if we bring this in there or move this up. Okay. So this is actually not necessarily only usable to close a window, but architects actually work with this a lot when they also think about the solar radiation. So the heat of sunlight coming into your space. Because when the sunlight starts bouncing off, it actually loses that heat. And we can still then guide indirect light into the space. Instead of having the blinds inside, it makes actually more sense to have them outside. Because when they come through the glass, hit the new blinds inside your room, they're warming up these blinds. Okay, I will turn off the rendering. I will press Control Z till, yeah, the piece is in the correct place. Now, let's go to edit mode. Control R. Let's create some cuts, left click, right click, and then I select the face mode, first face, P, next P, next P, next P, next P, and separated all those. That's the last one, very good. With all those selected, right click, origin to geometry. Z and render, and we can now rotate all objects around the individual origin. So look at this. Whoop, I have to hold the Option Alt key. Then this rotates all objects. Isn't that cool? So now we can close it, go horizontal. And if it's summer and you have blinds inside, pay attention to how your room is illuminated when the inner edge of the blind goes down or goes up. Very good. So this actually is the last room I wanted to do. And with this, we finished it. I hope you enjoyed kind of like this little journey of how we can create these type of studies, how architecture and the sunlight can interact. just directly in Blender via digital rendering. To bring this to an end, let me show you now how we can create realistic looking architectural renderings. And we have to adjust our scene a little bit. First thing, I have here room 1, and then I will select this room. You can see the model looks like a paper model. That's also what inspired me based on the material I used when I was a student. But for proper rendering or study, we need to have a wall thickness. Can go to modifiers, add modifier, solidify, and then here we select complex. That gives better results. Thickness 6 inches and to the outside. There we are. Perfect. Now to make our work a little bit easier, I'm going to here shift left mouse button click, select all these rooms, and then select shift click the first one. You see this is highlighted, and then I copy that modifier over. Control L, copy modifiers. And there you see they all have that thickness now. Perfect. Cool. Now, what's very important is when we do our rendering, we don't want to see everything. You see the cube, as long as you don't want to see it, also turn off the camera. And the same with all these other rooms. Now, let's go right click, split vertical, and we go into the camera. There we are. I select this camera. Let's take a look. We have a small tilt shift turned on, turn this off. Then we also see the limits. Turn this off to 0. Very good. Or maybe no, 1 foot. It's all good. And now these rooms have also different sizes. Technically speaking, since the background should be transparent, we can keep this at 1000 and 1000. But primarily what we will do is move this camera to where we want to see everything. So let's say eye level. You see, this is eye level. Perfect. So this looks like we're inside this room at the same height as these people. Good. Now, if we go to render and then go to film and transparent, you will see when we render that actually the background now is has this checkerboard, and that is always the symbol for transparency. You see, very good. And yeah, I guess we can agree on that. Well, this looks actually quite nice with this black outline. Okay, now to do another room, basically we turn everything off, turn all this on, then we can select the camera, simply move this further back. Because this is transparent, it's not really taking any time to render. Later we would have to crop the image in Photoshop. Or we could, for example, make this now less tall. It's up to you to work. Very good. I would like to go to room 6 because this one here is interesting. Now, so I'll move the camera up and back and over and there. I don't really see much of what's happening in the inside. I'm going to rotate the sunlight. Beautiful. But honestly, what's really important is not what's happening on top, but what's on downstairs. So I actually moved the camera down again, eye level. Only problem is I don't see the rest of the top, but this is then where I turn my tilt shift on and move this camera picture plane basically to there. Beautiful. And then I go ahead and simply hit render. Based on the architectural modeling, because it's a paper model, we give automatically material thickness. Most times this works out. Sometimes, like in this case here, there you can see there can be some tiny issues, but that's okay for what we're doing here right now. Perfect. So I think this then really covers everything. The render settings I also set. 150 is kind of fine for this. I'll hit render and enjoy these renderings. And here they are. That's it now.